No, it's interesting. You and I were talking earlier, and you said, he goes, in over the lifetime of my career, I've had 13 different phones, right? My very first phone came in a briefcase I did slam up on the hood of the car. It was 20 cents a minute. And I thought I was the coolest thing.
Hi, and welcome to the Future of Development podcast. My name's Anthony Amunategui, and I'm here to inspire people to find amazing careers in the construction development world. If you like our podcast, please make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. If you really like our podcast, make sure you hit the little bell. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Excited about having you. We've had some good times together.
We sure have. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, when we start looking at modular buildings, this is a big topic for us, right? We've had a lot of runs at modular buildings in construction.
Yes.
For most of my career, I've seen different iterations of a run, and I think this is it. We're gonna go modular, and and it's coming. And then it seems like we go backwards a little bit, and then we go forward, and we go backwards a little bit. So it's a lot to talk about, and we're going to get all into all that. But I think it makes sense for us to go back a little bit and talk about you, right? And what your background and a little bit how you got here. And let's just kind of start there.
I love it. You know what? I come from a long line of contractors.
Nice.
And you and I shared last night, I told my father I would never work in the construction industry, and I can't escape it. I've been in construction my whole life. So it's been a blessing, though. It's fun to build, and it's fun to watch things grow. And I've had varied experiences. I started my career actually at a civil engineering firm, and a little bit out of the construction industry, so I thought. And from there, I went to an environmental engineering firm, and then ended up at McDonald's.
So you went from the contractor side, yes, to the dark side,
yes, sir,
to the darker side.
Exactly. So, and then from there, I went to actually, there's a gentleman, Don Eichner, who hired me at McDonald's, and I was there about 4 years, yeah. And he went to Carl's Jr. He goes, "Hey, I got a great job for you. Why don't you come on over?" And I followed him to Carl's Jr. Within a year, he went on to Chick-fil-A. He's still there today. Nice. He kept begging me to come on, but I ended up staying at Carl's Jr. for about 12 years. Nice. So learned quite a bit in those first 15, 16 years between McDonald's and Carl's Jr. I went to the darker side. I actually sold signs for a year, and one of the biggest career mistakes of my life. But great company, great people. It just was not my cup of tea. So, but I went back to Carl's Jr. for a year, and then I moved on to Carl's Jr. And a gentleman by the name of Aaron Harris works at Popeyes. Went to work at Dutch Bros, and I've known him for years. He called me on the phone. He goes, "I got this great job for you. I'd love for you to come on over and meet the team and see if it's something you're interested in." I flew up, had a great conversation with the owners, very salty earth down, great people. And I realized, this is the brand I want to work for. I mean, they care about people. They care about, the future of children and, that are working underneath them. And I thought, well, I can really make an impact there. And
well, that's kind of cool, though. We're a lot like a baseball trading team.
We definitely
baseball teams, right? We kind of trade players back and forth between different places, and you get on with the team. You're not sure where the run. Are you going for the? Are you guys going to make it to the to the finals? And they always have these little runs with different groups.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's kind of fun to get into that.
Yeah, I do. I honest, Scott, I meet people in the industry at trade shows and things like that I've known for 20, 25 years, just because we all move from business to business. And it's kind of funny to see where they're at today. So
that's what I love about like ICSC, going to that show every year. It's like old home week.
It is.
You go see your brothers and sisters that and they're like wars we fought.
Oh yeah.
Right. I look at it's kind of like we go and fight these battles, right? The guys that I worked with at Boston Market, or the people that I worked with at Blockbuster Video, or the people that we worked at with Einstein Bagels or Au Bon Pain or Panera Bread. Those were little battles that we fought out there, right? Development battles across the country, and you troop up and you go out and you fight the battle. But you get a lot of great experience and great relationships with them.
Oh yeah.
They become really great friends.
Brothers in arms.
Yeah.
Is what we say. Yeah. You know what? It's and you talk about the battles, right? It's a battle of growth, or it's a battle of the decline, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the whole industry is wrought with the ebbs and flows of the economy. So it's very stressful, but at the same time, it's a lot of excitement and fun. So,
well, that was one of the reasons why I started CDO Group. Was I had gone through battle after battle after battle with different groups, and it was tough because you go through this and you're working your tail off. I had gone through the finals of the final cutbacks on Einstein bagels. And we're at a meeting in DC, and you're the team that's going to be here. And at the meeting, I got cut. Right, you're like, wow. You made it through like 6 or 7 cuts of staff, and the accounting team at the meeting like, you have one more. They're like, we weren't there, and the board director said you have to do one more. And my boss walked in, he was crying, like literally we were friends for that long, and just looked at it like, man, that's a tough one to go through. And I had to look at each other, and that's a tough one, right? You go through them, and I finally said, well, maybe I could create a company where I could do the same thing I loved doing, but I could do it over multiple brands. And then we could, if one was up, one was down, one was up, and it made it, not only that, it was also difficult for my young family at the time. Yes. I kept changing, I had 9 great career moves, but they were, I had to keep moving. And, there's an impact to your family and life in this business. You're kind of a hired gun to go out and to be a mercenary for a brand to build them.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah. So you get to Dutch Brothers. You love them, and you get to spend some time. You get in house. So how long have you been there now?
So I've been there coming up on 4 years.
Nice.
And so when I got there, we had about 270 locations. We have 578 now, in under 4 years. They've been in business 30 years. So it's kind of a mom and pop run business. It was a lot of family and friends, very strong franchise growth. And we just surpassed the number of corporate stores versus franchise locations. So, and that came with a crew of hiring 22 people on my team now. And I mean, just phenomenal groups, all ages, ranges, it's just an incredible team. So
as you're growing the team, there's a lot in that conversation, right? You're building this great team. They're all different ages, different groups. It tests you as a leader, right? You're now looking at every part of the business to grow it, right? From the construction projects that you're doing to the way that you execute with the team, the way you lead that team, and all the stuff that goes. I mean, for me, I feel this constant evolution of there's this constant evolution of me.
Yes. Right.
As much as the team we go through, I have this constant evolution, and it feels like I'm constantly evolving, right? I have to step up into it and step into being vulnerable again.
Yes.
Right. I walk in, and all right, there's all these new young people that are there, and I'm like, okay. They were, the guys who trained me they were kind of hardcore, right? Yeah. They would cuss at you, right? You'd walk in, at Boston Market, it would not be uncommon to have a chair fly across the room.
Yes.
Yeah. It was kind of a little bit rough and tumbly.
Yeah.
Today, that does not work.
Doesn't work.
Work. They were the language and the way that we interact with people. It was tough to do that. So
yeah, no doubt. Even when I was at McDonald's, towards the end of my stint there was a gentleman I was working with who the way he would talk to people would drive me insane. And I would say, hey, this is in the 1950s. I said, this is a different style of management, and it's evolved even further from that point to where we are today. And actually, I embrace everyone's knowledge on the team, right? You think people look up to you as a leader, but at the end of the day, you're just as nervous of making a wrong decision as they are making a wrong decision. But I think that you need to grab the information. The idea of the inverse pyramid, and we talked a little bit about that. Whereas a leader, you need to take, the knowledge from the people that are on the front lines and kind of filter it down and make a decision based on that. And so I do listen. And I think that's the most important thing to do, is to listen and grab the best knowledge and then make a decision based on that. And I think that our team has that collective ability to be able to manage projects that way and have open discussions, and it's worked well for our brand. So, and that's actually driven from our CEO as well.
But and I think that's a hard one. For most of the time, I've as a leader, you go through these. I don't know about you, but for me, I go through these places where it's vulnerable, to let go and let them do it, right? Because you're kind of tasked with making sure it goes forward. And a lot of what my career was, if I just worked harder, I would get this done. But then somewhere along the way, you realize that in order to get to the next level, you can't work that hard.
Yeah.
There's not enough hours in the day. You can't take enough time away from your family. It's just not sustainable. And being vulnerable and letting go and letting a team of people do that. We had a consultant that came in here, and she one of the first things she did is she walked to my office and she goes, "Hey, I'm gonna lock your door." I'm like, "Oh, that's good. I'll get some time to focus. They won't come in here." She goes, "No, no, no, no. That's to keep you in the office. Stop going out there and getting everybody's business." I go, "Whoa."
Yeah.
Whoa, 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 whoa. It was I was like, what? She goes, "Yeah." It goes, "You've hired these amazing people. And every time you walk out there, you kind of jump into their business."
Yeah.
And let them go through some pain. Let them go through it. And I'm like, I'm just trying to save them, the headache of it. Well, look, that's in order for them to lead the company that you've created, you've got here, they're going to go down there. And at first it was really vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it felt there was really raw, sitting behind my desk, like nervous about it. I was like, wow. So great stuff to talk about. I think that's a great thing to identify with growing it. So now you've grown a team. Now you're focused on, you've got this big team.
Yes.
And your numbers are, you now need to grow the number of stores you're doing. And this is where we start getting into the conversation about modular.
Yes.
Right. I think that's a cool conversation to really start to unpack. Where did you start to think about that? How did that process get started?
So, it's really funny. So if I can digress, our company went public about 5 months ago, 6 months ago. And so we've been tasked to grow the brand. Right. And so we knew it was coming. We saw it on the horizon. I work with an incredible partner in Aaron Harris. And we literally sat on the phone one night at 11 o'clock at night. We're saying, "Hey, how are we going to make this happen?" Right? We utilize build-to-suit developers for some of our growth, but that will only get us so far. It's probably about 40% of our business at this point. But we're saying, "Hey, how can we build faster, better?" Pre-COVID, our builds were down to 75 days. I mean, we were slamming them out. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And after COVID, I mean, we're back up now 122 days on average.
So let's go back. So your build a suit. Let's talk a little bit about that. That's more of a when you say build a suit, that's a developer that you partner with.
That's correct.
And they do a complete turnkey project for you, where you guys you give an address, or they give you the address and some numbers. You guys agree on the numbers, and then they turn over a completed. I mean, is it 100% completed when you get it?
It's 100% complete. The thought behind it is, hey, it's going to be easier. It's going to be less coordination. It's still a lot of coordination. We can talk a little bit about that when we come to the modular component as well. Unfortunately, you still have to have your hands touching it enough that you can guide, guide the ship. So, but on the build suit developer side, we have some fantastic partners. We're always testing other partners throughout the country. It's a lot of people think that the development industry is easy. You and I've been doing it a long time. It's not. It's changed dramatically over the last 20 years. And every week I'm surprised.
Yeah, right.
I feel like a rookie.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
like, I've never heard this before in my life. I've been doing this, my whole career. So, we like say, we talked a little bit about that. It's humorous, but it's frustrating at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so actually Aaron and I were talking one night about 11 o'clock at night about, hey, how can we do this better, faster, stronger? And I've had experience in panelized buildings, haven't worked well over the years. I mean, we can't find a system that works well. It never could for over 20 years. So then we started talking about modular. We're saying, hey, who does modular well? And we were kind of looking at all the different brands. And actually, if I can digress, when Dutch Bros started, they had mobile homes were their shops. I mean, they're 200 square foot shops on wheels that were stick built that they would roll into place and pave up to, and they would have a drive through on both sides. And that's how they started their business.
Really?
So, and that was after they had their pop-up tent with an espresso machine. Kind of that's a story in itself. But we said, hey, how can we replicate that, but in a little different fashion? We realized that Rallies and Checkers had been doing it for years. And so we sought out their supplier. And so it's a company called Valiant out of Florida. And they've been building for 30 years. for checkers.
And in that every brand that you go through, right? Even in the modular world, right? Companies like Value who've been doing it. We worked on checkers, and even they're still not they haven't gotten to today's technology, right?
That's
There's
correct.
still a lot of the old school 2D drawings, right? You've got this part of it. Hey, we're going modular. Yes. Right? Great idea. But you still got 2D design going on, hand sketches and things that aren't, that next level up. And you're like, well, you've gotten part of the system, right? Yeah. Right. And I think that's part of what we see, right? In the modular world is that it isn't 100% integrated. Yeah. And maybe that's part of the learning of the world, right? And part of it is we kind of go, okay, modular works. We understand that getting a finished product to the field and being able to unload it and put it in place much quicker changes things. It makes it a lot more predictable, right? It makes our schedules, our construction schedules a lot more predictable. Now, how do we get the build to be predictable? How do we get the ordering to be predictable? How do we get the budgeting to be predictable?
Yes.
All of those components take the other parts of the system. So it's not just the build component, it's now the design component. How is it not in Revit, right? So these modular buildings, how are they not in Revit, right? And that ultimately will change the upstream material selection, right? As we start to look at every individual component of the build in a 3D model in Revit type technology, where we can see each aspect of it. Now I can build every board to length. I can order raw materials, and these plants can go from taking stick build products and building them in a plant to taking raw materials and designing them custom for a product, which then ultimately makes for a much less impact to the environment. Right now, we're cutting each steel component or each part of the component to length, not taking what we're doing today in the field, which is taking a board, say it's an 8-foot wall or a 9-foot wall, we're taking a 10-foot board and cutting a foot of it off.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's 10% waste on every board that you cut over there. Now we're able to look at using steel and actually building each steel stud to the exact size. Right. It rolls off of a sheet of flat steel, and now they can actually make much stronger, much better designed steel studs to the exact specifications and lose no material. Yeah. And especially today, nowadays with COVID and where we got going on with wood products, there's some neat impact there.
Yeah, it's huge. It's really interesting. You talk about Revit. We actually made a decision this past February with our entire architectural team. So when I got to the business, we had 21 architects that were working on our buildings. We had zero control. The great thing about being a corporately owned business that builds corporate stores for the most part, I mean, out of the 125 we're going to build this year, 20 of them will be franchise. And so, but they do use our architects. We have a lot more control about how things are built and designed. But in February, we made the decision and said, hey, you guys, by the 1st of 202023, you all need to be in Revit.
Wow.
I mean, it's a fantastic.
That's hallelujah. Praise to you and your group. Look, why every brand in the world is not making that move today. They're just not seeing the foresight. They're not seeing. They're archaic, and it's kind of like the Uber drivers who are the taxi drivers that don't want to go on to Uber.
Yes.
It's like you stop. You're holding on to an old shield because you have some sort of investment in that shield. That's a sunken cost. Let go of it. It's time to invest in the future. And okay, great. I know that you've got a bunch of 2D drawers, but it's now time to start looking at changing the mechanics. Great. Look, having great 2D drawers really helps go into the next level much better, but it's time now to evolve because that next level that happens, when you say that to me, why every brand isn't setting a line in the sand and saying, hey, we're going to give you time to do it. You're going to be our team. We're going to go forward with it. Make the call and start going there. It's inspiring, right? Yeah. You're the dog who's wagging the tail, who ultimately helps everybody, right? To make that call. That's where brands got to be bold. I think it's bold in thinking. It's a little hard to people go, well, I don't know if I would do it. But on the other side of it, every one of these things that they're afraid of will be so much more impactful to them, the business, and what we're doing. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of the construction process.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's fear, right? I mean, it's listen, we're a bunch of gray-haired old men, and we sat in a room with our architects, and the look of horror on their face was telling, right? And the more we sat and talked about it, one of the architects said, he goes, every person that I interview, young person coming out of college, they never even heard of CAD. They're all working in Revit. And he says, honest, this is going to be a tough transition for our team, but he goes, it is something we need to look into. And it's life changing, to your point.
Yeah, it's not the new guy.
Yeah.
It's the guy who owns the place.
Yes.
Here, it's our age.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're the bottleneck. For Christ's sakes, we have changed a lot in our life. Right.
Yes.
I started with no computer. Yeah. And then, the construction world, when I remember we were trying to get laptops on a job site, people were like, no way, they'll never do that. It's too messy. If we walked out right now and took every laptop from our job site today, this job site would get shut down.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But it was not 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, you were just starting to get the complete conversion. But 10 years ago, it was tough to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's interesting. You and I were talking earlier, and he said, he goes, in over the lifetime of my career, I've had 13 different phones. Right. my very first phone came in a briefcase I did slam up on the hood of the car. It was 20 cents a minute, and I thought I was the coolest thing, around. But now we're carrying an actual computer in our pocket every day. It's amazing, and I think that we need to look at that. Tesla's done it. Actually, if you look at Tesla, the first cars on the road were actually battery operated cars. But the batteries didn't last long, and so they went to a combustion engine, and a combustion engine's been in use since the 20s, let's say, give or take. But and now we're going back to electric cars and things of that nature. So we kind of went full circle there. Our brand is going full circle now. We're looking at, we started with mobile homes, and now we're going back to kind of a mobile home type of unit, modular unit. But you need to take a look at, where the industry's going in Asia and in Europe. Modular buildings are everywhere. We're just starting to really make an impact here in the States, and it's a slow impact. Part of the reason is because jurisdictions aren't sure what a modular unit is. They think it's a mobile home. What they don't realize, it's not a stick-built building. This is a steel structure that probably has a 50-year life and is earthquake proof and hurricane proof. And I mean, they are solid, strong structures that are great buildings in the long run.
When I was a kid, I was in Italy, and I remember thinking, I saw my first hands-free sink. And I remember I walked out of the bathroom. I ran and got my parents. I'm like, you could wash your hands without touching the sink.
Yeah.
And I was like maybe 7 years old, maybe 8 years old. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Oftentimes I think we get caught up in our own mojo, right? Our own Americans, which is great. Look, we have our country's amazing, but sometimes we don't take on that. It's time to look. Some other people may have some ideas that are worth taking from, right? Letting go of our egos and saying, all right, it's time for us to evolve again, to take another step, right? To take that next step in construction, to take that next step in history that goes, look, because we have been stick building forever, and we have this whole troop of people that are great at stick building, but what's the impact, right? The other day I saw a study that said 9% of all materials that we bring to a job site end up in a waste heap.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's before they even use it. Right. I mean, it's cut, put a thing, thrown in a dumpster. 9% of all of that. They're just, the hundreds of millions of pounds of waste that we put out there. What's that impact on our world? That's just that one idea. Right. And as we start to look at the other ones and go, all right, maybe there's a smarter way of doing this. And as we allow ourselves to be vulnerable again.
Yes.
Right. Like we were talking about his leadership. I even felt a little stupid as I evolved, right? I felt, when she locked that door on me, I was on the other side of that room, like I felt a little stupid, a little vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. But somewhere in there was this ability to let them grow, and the new ideas started to flourish, and the company that we became, and I believe that the country that we are, we're a powerful country. Making these changes takes a little bit to do.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, we all know that that's the right move, right? And as we look at the plants and so I think that's something to look at, to talk about a little bit is, to make the change over to modular is going to take a little bit from all of us.
Yes.
Right. I mean, look, any guy in a pickup truck can be a contractor tomorrow, right? You get a good F-150, slap your magnets on the side, walk up the doors and knock out, and now you're in business.
Yes.
Right. To be a modular company isn't that easy.
No, no way. You know, you look at the trajectory of growth that we've had over these past few years, and you're talking about the lumber and waste and things of that nature. The demand for lumber can't keep up, you know, with the industry today. And so that's why we're seeing the numbers go through the roof. I mean, you know, for whatever reason that is, but a lot of it is just supply and demand. We have got to come up with different materials to build. And there's a few companies out there that are making that happen, right? There's a company called Crexy. They're out of Canada, and they actually have done a building with Starbucks. Now they've only done one, but I mean they're trying different materials and trying different things to see, hey, how can we build better, you know, cheaper. I was actually here in Chicago about 4 weeks ago, and I went to a 3D modeling convention, and part of the reason I went there was to see, hey, what's happening in the industry for building. The people I spoke to said, hey, look, we've been doing this for 20 years. The advancements in 20 years have been amazing, but we're not quite there yet to do a full 3D printed building. But they go, it's probably 5 years away. It's probably not as far away as we expect it to be. So there's a lot of things on the horizon that I think, if to your point, there's a thought that this next generation is, hey, they're not going to work as hard as we are. They're not going to have the ideas that we have. I think they're going to be better. I think over time, it just takes a while to get your foothold, and, you know, they're going to work differently than we work. I mean, we were talking about how, you know, I work still 67 hours a week. I'm 57 years old. You know, I'll probably do that to the day I die, you know, but it's how I grew up. It's just something about hard work. But it's also too, it's to your point, it's opening up the door and letting those ideas flow upwards and flow outwards, and embracing that.
You know, that's a big one, right? Because I most of my career, it's been just sheer force.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I get up earlier than everybody else. I work later, and a lot of the young people are now. I'm not saying that they're not, you know, but sometimes young people get this bad rap.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've had meetings where we bring the older team together and the younger team together. And some of them started off kind of ugly. I mean, I remember we had one meeting, we brought them all together, and the older guys were like, you know, the meeting started. The first sentences out of everybody, the older guys were like, all you young people want are bean bags and ping pong tables. I'm like, this is going to go sideways.
Yeah.
And then the young people were like, all you older guys want us to follow you. And, you know, for a long time, there was a lot of that, right? I mean, you know, when we were tribal, to know the woods, to know where the lions and tigers were was important.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a time when that was valuable. And today what's happening is there's some value to things that, you know, historical folks have, like you and I carry, but there's also some value to their new discovery, right? There's some young people in our office today that, you know, I had a meeting with our chief or the VP of operations, and he's doing stuff. I had a meeting with him yesterday, and I just reveled in how wise he was. Yeah. He's almost, you know, he's 20 years younger than me, and he's doing things on Smartsheet and communication with multiple teams that I'd have 5 programs put together to put that together. You know, and they're archaic and they're a little rough to use. And he can communicate with 4 or 5 different brands with APIs that he set up, and it communicates to their systems differently. And I sat there when I took a moment and just really just enjoyed the wisdom that the way he looked at it was much different than I did. And I think that's what's going to take a lot of us to be able to go, all right, let's bring that in. Let's support them and whatever they need to get there, because they're going to lead us the way. They're going to lead the way to it. And what we get to bring them is maybe the wisdom of ability to show them, hey, we can evolve. And by the way, you're going to need to evolve also as you grow, right? I think, you know, showing that vulnerability of being able to change.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, and you look at Uber, for instance, right? It wasn't a taxi driver that thought of Uber. It was somebody who recognized a need and says, man, there's a better way of doing this. You look at Airbnb, same thing. There's a different or better way of doing this that other people can monetize. And those have changed entire industries. The hotel industry and the taxi industry are forever changed because of that. And I think we need some kind of shakeup like that in the construction industry. We're not there. I think we're tiptoeing around it. To your point, it's a big investment, right? I was out at a company called Extreme Cubes last week in Las Vegas, and I mean they're trying to find ways to automate the entire system for a modular build. And they make their own studs. We talked a little bit about that, where they have the flat metal and then they make the stud, and the tensile strength is unbelievable. I mean, you could bounce up and down on those 2x4s they make and they don't move, but when they come out, they're all labeled and numbered. So when it goes out to the factory, they put them in the exact order in the exact spot. It has all the holes, for all the feeds for plumbing, electrical already cut into it. And it's an absolutely amazing process. So it's something you need to see at some point.
Oh, I think that's fun, right? They're looking at it, like the difference between, the way you and I change tires and the way NASCAR people change tires.
Yes.
Right. I mean, their ability. You and I may take a half hour on a good day if it's not buried under the crap in my back, stuff that's in there. And by the time I get it out, and then my son probably borrowed my lug wrench somewhere and took it off. And it's probably not in my car when I need to get it. So I got to wait for someone to stop and let me borrow their lug wrench, and I got to get one that fits the car that I'm in. And although now I have a Tesla, I just call roadside service and they come. So that helps. But where the NASCAR folks, boom, 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 they're changing a tire in 3 or 4 seconds, right? I mean, it's seconds that change. And I think that's what's happening is companies like them are starting to find ways to take out every one of the components of it. We worked on that in the bar business, right? We always had these like triangles in the bar business, right? Everything that you needed to get to, and it was easy to get there. And we had efficiency experts come in and work with the bar brands to make those as efficient as you could. Everything you needed was right there. But we don't do that in our. Sometimes I feel like we're genius when we move a porta potty closer to people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're like, we're genius. Look at, we saved 25 steps, and the levels by which we can go up. Start getting a lot more fun.
Oh, amen. It's really interesting as my older brother took over my dad's business. And I remember when they were going through the transition, and just the way that my dad used to manage different things. And my brother would go, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing it this way or that way?" My dad goes, "I've been doing it the same way for 20 years. And he goes, "You probably saved me, 50% on the cost and 50% on the time, just by a small tweak, by asking the right question." Right. And I think that naivety is probably something that we need to embrace. It is. It's like I say, I see it every day. I'm like, I watch the way that I'm doing something, and one of my team members will offer a new idea or new way of doing it, and I'm blown away. So.
Yeah, I have a hard time when we do presentations or processes. I go to sit down with the team. I want to go pull my files out and pull out my old flowcharts.
Yeah.
And I've got bookshelves of flowcharts I can show you. But there's something about when I don't pull it out and they reinvent their own.
Yeah.
Right. I can help them sometimes see something they can't see, which is kind of fun. Right. I not being in the fire. I think that's a lot of the value that we can offer, is that I'm not in the day-to-day fire with them. And sometimes I can come in and see just a process that happens a little bit smarter. And, I think that's what's happening with the modular world, right? As every 3 to 5 years, we have this run at modular, right? And more brands are getting it. The modular home business is blowing away, right? Mobile homes are phenomenal. The work they're doing in the mobile home business, as like the construction business, we're getting technologies from other industries.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I'm looking at, I had a meeting with some guys here the other day who are taking X-ray technology and EKG technology and all the stuff they're using in the medical world. A group of Israeli, they were former generals for the Israeli army, right? Wow. These genius guys. They were really, really smart. They were from M31, or a very specialty branch of the Israeli army. And before the Israeli Special Forces, and before they even got their first product built out, someone invested $19 million in them. I'm like, they don't even have a product. They're still taking 6 or 7 different machines and rolling around a job site as an experiment. And now what they're trying to do is combine them so that they can get these ground penetrating radar. They can take X-ray, they can take sonar. They're taking 7 different measuring devices, so they can go up to as deep as a mile into the ground and be able to see the different components of it: shales, stones, finishes. I mean, that's genius, right? I mean, right? I mean, remember the days when you get that ground penetrating radar, a guy looking like with a motor or with like a lawnmower walking around, and you see these little waves, and you're trying to decipher what that wave means, right? You know, is that a layer of shale, or did someone bury a doll or something? But now they can see through things and shapes and sizes, and I think where that goes is, they've taken something that's in the medical world, they're bringing it over to the construction world, and they even say they're going to get to a point where they're going to be able to fly that over a job site. Yeah, right. That's pretty cool.
It's phenomenal. Like I said, the technologies. Every time I walk out on a job site, it's here's the thing. I mean, you've been doing this long enough in your career. You walk out on a job site and you see master plumbers and you see master drywallers. I mean, I literally sat on a job site for 20 minutes one day just to watch a drywaller work. I've never seen anybody work so fast and efficiently in my life. And I mean, he would throw the tape up and he would go out and he would, score the drywall and throw it up there, and it matched perfectly every time. And I mean, it was within seconds. Now, I couldn't understand he was doing so quickly. Yeah. And I just followed him around and just watch him work. I mean, there's some people that are just so good at their job, or they have such a grasp of what it is they need to get done, but it's mechanical, right? Yeah. And I think that to your point, you can apply that in a lot of different fashions. And I'd love to see that in the modular world. It's coming. I mean, I'm telling you, I think we're right on the cusp. There's a conference called Advancing Prefabrication. I went to it a couple of years. It was more on a larger scale for hotels and apartment buildings and things of that nature. And they're doing it. I mean, but it takes them, before they even start the build, it's a 1.5 to 2 years of them planning where everything's going to go, how it's going to lay out. It's just a lot different. It's a lot different type of work. But once the plan is designed and they're ready to manufacture, I mean, it's quick. They spit out the manufacturing process fast.
Yeah. So I think that's a lot of the hurdles that we're learning, right? I think why, Sears and Roebuck had my first house was a Sears and Roebuck catalog house.
Wow.
Right. And it was built in like 1931. And the original owner, he came by, right? He was this old guy, and he was the original owner of the building. And he came by and showed me pictures when he was building it, right? He bought it for $2,500, wow. And you could buy it for it was $2,500 for the thing, and it came on a rail car, and then it was another $2,500 if you wanted them to assemble it, right? I'm like, this is our $2,200, something like that, yeah. And he had gone through a couple of owners since he was there, but he had all these original, like they were the old the old pictures that you kind of put in the box and looked at it. Oh, yeah, yeah. You kind of had a little stick stuck out of it, and he was showing me these. And I'm like, this is really cool. And like every component of it had, like I refinished all the woodwork. Someone had painted it all. It was originally just beautiful oak wood, and and every night I'd come home and I'd just take one door jamb off, and I'd strip one, and then I'd finish one, and then I'd hang one. Right, I had this like little assembly line in my basement, and I was kind of I was 20. I don't know, 23 years old, 24 years old. I was young, and I just got my first real job, and I bought a house, and it was sweat equity, right? You did when you were young. It was all that sweat equity we did. But Sears and Roebuck had a run at modular prefab homes, right? They're kind of prefab done. Now, when I was in my late 20s, we were building extended stay Americas. And we would take the entire room and we'd package it up into a bundle. We take the bed, the carpet, the nightstand, every part of it, and we put it in there, and we slide it into the room before we close at the front wall. And we were going to save hundreds of thousands of steps up and down the stairs, because no one wanted to let us use the elevator, because it's a new elevator. They wanted, so you had to carry all that stuff in, and all the beating it would do to the building. And we thought, we're genius. Yeah. And by Moore's law, today we should be building hotels, in a weekend. Yeah. But again, I think the industry goes back a little bit, right? Because the rest of the systems aren't there yet, right? The part you're talking about, the setup, right? The part of it that can see the design work, right? And now that's starting to come, right? With BIM technology, that was a big changer in the last few years, right? Being able to see, take the digital world, the physical world, and make it digital, right? And then vice versa, take the digital world and make it physical, right? So there's a lot of stuff now that is helping make that evolution happen where you didn't have that before. You were taking, these 2D drawings and trying to design these systems way out there. Today with Revit, right, and being able to go modularize with BIM, being able to, we were with some guys the other day that had HoloLens glasses that you can flip them on with the total station, and you can now see the whole entire job site in 3D while you're in the work, while you're on the job site. So you can see right where the wall needs to be, and you kind of flip your lenses up, and you're in the physical world. You flip them down. You can see the digital world right there, and I mean that's a phenomenal, right? So those are the breakthroughs that we needed to support this. I think a lot of the modular stuff we're doing, where the ideas were there, now stuff to support it is coming up to catch up to the ideas to support that, so that upfront work doesn't have to be a year. It can get a little smarter and faster in that development. I think we're going to see that really start to boom where we go.
Yeah. We talked a little bit. My biggest fear, and it's justified or unjustified, is the people that will be left behind. There will be a core group of people that will be left behind, right? Because not everybody has the skill set to operate in that kind of functional environment. So what does that mean for the labor market, right? The labor market is going to shift. The one thing about the modular program is, it's controlled costs in a controlled environment with controlled materials. To your point, it's more sustainable. It's less space. I mean, there's so many great advantages of the modular program. And maybe it's, we need to go back to the days when we're training skills for, manual functional labor versus, everybody wants to get a college education because they want to be the smartest person in the room. And, listen, I was on the 10-year college program. I did it for, my own benefit. I don't know how much it served me, honestly, over the years. I wanted that piece of paper. I had now my master's degree, something that I wanted. But, at the end of the day, the jobs that I've had have been fairly blue collar. Everything that I've learned over the years, I probably didn't need to go to school for that, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So
maybe school is just the extension of your childhood, right?
Exactly.
Right. Maybe it's that transition that goes, all right, maybe it's time to learn how to do my own laundry, right? Yeah. And how to have a keg party and not get busted. Exactly. Right? Because there's some value to that whole thing. So there's, that whole transition of it. But for a long time we answered phones, 555 Chicago, and with a switchboard.
Yes.
And then we went to the Bell phones, right? And there was a whole team of people that built Bell phones. Our next door neighbor, Mr. Funky, was a Bell phone technician. He climbed those poles every day, and I thought he was fascinating. He'd climb up there and he could hook up phones, and it was just a fascinating guy. And today, I don't know anybody that's got my mother was the last of the people that had a home phone, right? And I think in our office, we got a couple of landlines here that but the Bell system's changing, right?
Yes.
And people are still getting. We're going to have some people that have a hard time with the transition. They're always going to be that guy.
Yeah.
But in the same way that you take the time to say, hey, it's time to evolve your team, and they're going to be shocked at first, once they get through the other side of it, right? Remember, everything that's great in life is right on the other side of scaring the crap out of me.
Oh, amen.
Right? I mean, I scare the crap out of myself, and I think about it, and then on the other side, I'm like, oh, this is freaking awesome, right? And I get more freedom, or I get more, I get to be another way, and I think that's what it'll lead to. Just in the moment, it feels overwhelming.
It does. It's funny. You look at Elon Musk. I mean, it's a great example. I mean, who tells him no? I mean, the man has an idea. I mean, he's all in. The gentleman that owns Extreme Cubes, his name is Don Ahern's. He owns Ahern's Rentals, and very, very financially successful guy. And just to hear him talk and hear the way his mind works, he's at that same mindset. And I think there's a certain group of people that, like, man, if I think I can do it, I'm going for it. I'm all in. And it's unfortunate that more of us aren't like that, right? There's a lot of fear, behind that, where they're like, hey. And Elon Musk even starting Tesla, he's like, I was all in, because I almost went out of business, right? A couple of times SpaceX. I mean, he has a solar panel company. It's Solar Run, I believe. But I mean, he's done everything that he has put his mind to And he's had failures along the way,
Yeah.
but it's that growth mindset, right? There's a Carol DeWick, she's from Stanford University, and it's the whole thing is about, the gist of it is failing forward. You take all the knowledge you have, all the experiences, as well as listening to the people on the way up, and that's how you define how you're gonna grow your business, or how you're gonna grow as a person. So it's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, I love it. The first time I bought a Tesla. I went on a test drive with my next door neighbor. He calls me up one day and goes, "Hey, you want to go? You want to go on a test drive for this Tesla thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're gonna." He goes, I got a booking. We're gonna go to the mall and test drive. I'm like, "What? They sell the cars in the mall?" He goes, "Yeah, we're gonna go over to Oak Brook Mall and we're gonna test drive a Tesla." And we get in this thing and we drive around, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I could see the future."
Yeah.
Right. I could see it. I got in this car. I'm like, this is the future. You can see one day I'll never need to touch a steering wheel again.
Yeah.
Like I'll be able to be in my car and hang out with my family and do stuff, and it'll drive me wherever I need to go safer. I could see it in that moment. And I walked out and I bought the car.
Yeah.
And I remember my wife had called me at the time, and she goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm buying a car." She goes, "Well, what kind of car are you buying?" And I go, "I'm buying a Tesla." And her and my son looked at the price, and she's like, "I'm going to kill you." And I'm like, "But now you can't get her out of the car." Right?
Yeah.
She got in it. But even with that, he set this vision of where it was going to go. And the truth was, it's not completely self-driving. Yes. I got it right. It could get on the highway and stay in a lane and keep you away from me. But over the time they've had it, it continues to get smarter. Right. And I think that's what we got to do, is that we're not going to get 100% where we need to go with the ideas. Right? We're going to go 100% modular. We're going to go modular. We're going to go Revit. You're going to set the goal out there, and there's going to be some lagging parts to it that will catch up, because we don't realize how much more in development little things need to figure out. His logic with going camera versus LiDAR, it's genius. At the end, it'll be a much smarter technology, but it's going to take a little bit more to get to that point. And I think that's what you're doing, right? As you and your brand move over to Revit, and you're going to scare some of the architects that are doing it. Some will go and some will be fearful, but ultimately at the end, when they're on the other side of that, every one of them, I believe, will look at you and go, I wish I would have done this sooner.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. It is. And sometimes it takes somebody forcing your hand, right? And as we discussed, there's a lot of pushback. And but I think at the end of the day, we're going to be better for it. I mean, there's still a lot of things that you cannot do in the field. We can manufacture the building, but we still have to touch the property, right? We still have to trench for the utilities, and we still have to, grade everything out and compact the dirt and, do everything we need to get the site ready for the modular building. That's all labor intensive. That's probably, if you look at our building now, it's probably 60 days out of the 122-day build is that site prep, getting ready. And then we set the building in place, and then we probably have another 3 to 4 weeks of, finishing all the paving, having all the inspection, things of that nature. So, we're still probably about 90 days with a modular build. But it's better, right? Time is money. I mean, those are lots. All the days that we can trim off the schedule are more days that we can be open and generating income for our brand. So it is something that's very important to us, and we'll get there. We think we can, at some point, get it down to about a 60 to 65 day build. That's our ultimate goal. I did
a podcast the other day with a group that has they're mining 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Actually 23 hours a day. They're down for an hour a day to do maintenance. They go in and they check the oil, the temperature, and then set up all the logistics of it. But they're mining. Imagine these massive mining vehicles, big grader, big giant backhoes and dump trucks moving hundreds of tons of material completely unmanned. And I'm looking at it going, there's 8 trucks on this mining site, all moving simultaneously in different spots with not a human in it. And we squint our eyes, and you can imagine that on our job site. I mean, and that's one of the big things about our job sites is today we are. Our guys get in at 6, they're done at 2, from 2 to the next morning at 6 o'clock, it's an empty job site.
Yeah.
Right. If we're able to take that thing and go, all right, how could these vehicles be able to do this 24 hours a day sustainable. Now look, first thing, of course, everybody's going to say, I want safety. I don't want that vehicle going off course and driving through my neighbor's house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to, that's going to cause us to slow down and just really think about what we're doing and make sure that we've got, that we're not just running out like cowboys, letting autonomous vehicles run with heavy material in them, with kids and people around it, because we want to be safe. So some of that's going to take a little bit of the evolution, but you can see where that's the one we want to get to. Now, how do we start to line that up and, get those site vehicles? A lot of the site work that we do, even today, even the site work we do, some of the brands we work with, we do so much more over excavating and because we can't see the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, how oftentimes do you do a site work where you're pulling out 8x8, material just because there could be, right? You just want to, some engineers over engineered it, and gone another step to go, I just got to make sure that's compact. Right now, with maybe this group from Israeli that's able to look at the actual materials that are there, and maybe I can do this with a spread footer, maybe I can do this with a different way of doing it. I don't have to so I think we're going to continue to see that, and maybe that's the fun part for the young folks that are coming in, right? They're able to really help spur on some of those things we started, and take that path and go, all right, cool. That's going to be fun to go down.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because how many times have you been on a job site where you punch holes all over a job, and then you go and you take your first shovelful and you hit a car? I mean, it happens, right? I mean, it's happened to me, 50 times in my career. So, it's kind of approaching things differently. But it's really interesting. I mean, just talking with you and what you're doing here with this podcast, it may sound trivial to a lot of people. Maybe people at home watching are thinking, well, these are two talking heads, right? But maybe it'll strike somebody the right way to get them motivated to try something different. And I think that's where it starts with an idea, right? You can be in the world of ideas and just spin around ideas. We call that analysis paralysis. And or you can take the idea and implement them. And I think that's the exciting thing about the modular program. When you and I talked earlier, we actually have 3 modular companies that we're utilizing right now. We had one that was struggling a little bit in Texas to get approvals through the state, and we're like, hey, you're holding us up. We've got to yank your contract because we got to have one of these other modular companies come in and finish it. Well, the only problem is the envelope of the building was different. That was problem number one. The points of connection were different. And so it made us realize, like, wait a second, we need to standardize, these modular buildings. We have prototype drawings for our stick builds. We need to have a quasi prototype. All manufacturing processes are a little different, but we're trying to figure out a way to have a prototype modular design that can be utilized across 2 or 3 brands. So it's something that we were just starting on today because of what happened a couple of weeks back. So those are the things that, like I said, I think will help us get to where we need to faster.
It's you keep hitting those spots, right? You keep us another spot you hit, and all right, good. Here we learn. Now we have to get multiple brands. I mean, so each one of them has a different speed, a different materials, different parts and pieces. Now every time you bump up against another learning curve, now you put, I say everything we do is expand, right? We expand our ideas, and then we organize. But what happens in between the two of those? Yeah. It's crazy as crap.
A lot of pivoting.
Right. It's a lot of crazy as crap, right? All the stuff you're like, you're like, all right, that's why I'm bald. Yeah. That's all that stuff in between. Then you get to organize. You're like, all right, now that makes it easier. But I'm with you. It's a joy that we think this way. We stop our day enough to think, and maybe there's some of the mastery of having some wisdom or having some age to us and a little experiences that we could stop. As a kid, I worked for this guy, Tom Walters, and Tom, I was working crazy. I remember I landed one day. I'd flown every day. Yeah. And I came into the office for a design meeting with an architect, and I walked into his office and he was reading the newspaper. He was reading the Wall Street Journal. And I'm like, Tom, how could you be reading the newspaper? I've been flying for 7 days in a row, and I'm here for a meeting for a couple of hours, and I'm leaving this afternoon. I got to go. And he's like, Anthony, gotta remember it. And for us to really develop, you got to think right? There's got to be a little bit of thinking in what we're doing, right? We got to think a little bit. If we run, sometimes we can't see the fire, right? We got to stop and sharpen the saw, right? And I was like, words of wisdom that at the time I just thought he was a crazy old guy.
Yeah.
Today I look back and I'm like, man, it was just a genius way of looking at it, man. You know, and even then I didn't even have the things to think about, right? Because I didn't know how big a net to cast on stuff. I was throwing a big net on every idea that I had. And, you know, thought Bruce strength could get me there. So, Danny, I got to tell you, I love our time together.
Yeah, amen.
You know, it's been a joy from the second we met, and you know, I think my wife would say the same thing, brother. I hope that we can continue to do this. We get out to Vegas. I want to go see that plant.
Yes,
I think it makes sense for us to go spend some time in the plant. Maybe we'll do a live podcast with them out there.
Yeah, that'd be
I
great.
think it'd be kind of fun to take the show on the road and go show off some of the cool modular stuff that's happening. And you know, it's a pleasure to have you, and look forward to having you on some more.
I appreciate it, Anthony. It has been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of laughs, and again, I appreciate your spirit and your humility. It's a blessing to see. So thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's. If you guys like the podcast, please take a second and hit the subscribe button. Please. It's the only way we really know that we're making some impact. If you got some comments about it, or a guest, or somebody you want us to see, take a second and write that right down below. We're going to connect links to a bunch of the things we talked about down below, and look forward to having you on some future shows. So thanks for listening. I am completely grateful for the time. Thanks for joining us. My name is Anthony Amunategui, always looking for people to bring insight into the industry, finding ways to inspire people to have amazing careers in the development world. If you liked our podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. If you really liked our podcast, make sure you hit the little bell. Thanks again for listening. Please share it with your friends.